it's very important that you align your assets with the goal. Okay, so a lot of people get anxious or nervous when they hear that the Dow Jones is down 300 points or 400 points. If you don't need to access that capital though for many, many years, then that market volatility should not cause you nervousness or
Hey
uneasiness.
there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Jake Falcon. Jake has nearly 20 years of experience in the financial services industry. He's committed to helping clients pursue their financial goals and navigate the markets through both good and uncertain times and preserve their legacies. So Jake, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm definitely looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Jason. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And I think we are maybe in some uncertain times, so that will be particularly relevant to what's going on. But maybe you can start with just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of what got you to where you are today, and then I'm going to have questions.
Sounds great, Jason. Yeah, thanks again. So my background, I was actually born in Kansas City, moved to Nebraska, and then eventually West Texas at a young age. I grew up in Texas. Went to college at the University of Texas, San Antonio, got a bachelor's in business, and I actually went to school to be a golf pro, like at a golf course, is what I originally thought I wanted to do. However, in college, I had a part-time job working at a golf course, and I realized that the pros there worked all the time, including weekends, and didn't make that much money. And you know what, Jason, they didn't seem that happy with their lives. So after college, after I graduated, I quickly pivoted into finance. Finance was my favorite course in college. And so I started my career in 2006. Even though I grew up in Texas, I never really identified as a Texan. So I moved back to Kansas City where I was born. And like I said, flash forward, this will be my 18th year practicing. Now we have a team of 19 professionals. We have clients in 35 states. And we do two things. We do everything regarding financial planning, which would include budgeting, retirement planning, and tax planning. And then what also something that makes us a little unique is we do all of the investment management in-house. So we don't use any products with our clients. We buy and sell individual stocks, bonds, and options. And that's our offering for our clients. And love what I do. And so much so that I wrote a book about it. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit today.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating. This is off topic, but I think very relevant to your where you've lived. So Kansas City versus Texas barbecue. There's a big debate there. I would imagine if you're from Kansas City, then you're going to probably side with the Kansas City barbecue. But what did you think when you were in Texas then in comparison?
Right. So yes, and my mom and dad really loving Kansas City. I was always biased towards Kansas City barbecue. I'll tell you, in my opinion, Kansas City has the best burnt ends. If you've ever had burnt ends, have you ever had those? Yeah. That is, in my opinion, the best type of barbecue if anyone's coming through Kansas City to order here. I think Texas is very brisket oriented, and I think they do a good job, but I don't. There's you just put them side by side. There's no comparison. To me, Kansas City's got Texas beat. They just do.
Well, and I know, there's Texans are very, very particular about their barbecue. And so it's just funny because I've actually never had Kansas City barbecue. I know there's strong opinions on it. I did live in Houston, Texas for a while. But growing up, I never liked barbecue at all until I moved to Texas. And I was like, this is amazing. And I like brisket. So I need to try Kansas City bar. If you're saying that the brisket's better there, then I definitely need to check that out. So sorry for the aside, but when you list those two places, I was like, oh man, he's going to be a barbecue connoisseur. So
very spoiled.
When you were in college, we're going to be a golf pro. I honestly didn't even know that was necessarily a thing to go to college for. I can imagine where it would look like a cool job and fun, and probably is when you're a bit younger, but in terms of, sort of long-term stability and and wealth building, I'm sure you made the right path. You chose the right path. What was it about finance? You said it was sort of your favorite topic in college. What was it about that drew you to it? And obviously enough so that you made that your career.
Right. Yeah. So, I kind of went through school throughout. So I took during fall semester and even summer school in college. I was down in San Antonio and I enjoyed it down there. So I just kind of always stayed in school. And my finance course was in the summer. And the course, I think, was 2 or 3 hours long. So it was 2 or 3 hours each period. And because they had a shortened semester, so the class length had to be longer. But it was one of those classes, Jason, and I'm sure you can relate, being a doctor, is that I was on the edge of my chair the whole time, fully engaged with the professor, completely nerding out on bond interest and alpha and beta and ratios. And it just fascinated me how people could use their hard-earned money and reinvest it in other avenues to eventually take care of themselves for the rest of their life. So I just was fascinated about that there's these efficient capital markets out there that you can use to your advantage to create some sort of a somewhat passive income stream to help fund your retirement. And then when you couple that with being able to help people retire with confidence and get to use the financial markets or the numbers aspect of it, that's why it's been. Yeah, I skip into work every day because those two things are both amazing to me, and I don't really consider what I do work because of that. 'Cause I get to help people and I get to deal with math.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the person you want as a financial advisor and a money manager, someone who is that passionate about it. And I think it's interesting. So, you mentioned as a doctor, regrettably, no finance courses.
Yeah.
Nothing in high school, college, like undergrad, nothing in vet school, like literally nothing the whole time. It's not a part of that curriculum. Should be, at least in terms of personal finance and business management for people who want to own their own practice. So I in hindsight, sort of look back and hear those types of stories, and I'm like, not that I don't regret the path I took, but I wish I had known what I know now, and I'm still learning, much better at an earlier age. So, yeah, fascinating to sort of head down that. I feel like it's a topic that probably a lot of people shy away from, avoid, whatever, don't keep those classes as only, required, taking them only as required classes. But the reality is if you look at what's going to be practical and usable for your life, in the long term, it's very, very important. So you left college and got into this field, and if you've been doing this for 18 years, I mean, I think you've seen a lot of changes in the markets, ups and downs. You said your bio says both good and uncertain times. What do you? I wonder what you think about kind of maybe if there are different strategies when it's bull market, everything's going good, the economy's great, versus right now when there is some uncertainty in the markets. What's kind of your approach to that those situations?
Right, and thank you for asking that. So it's very important. There's really two pieces that I want to bring up to that question. Is it's very important that you align your assets with the goal. Okay, so a lot of people get anxious or nervous when they hear that the Dow Jones is down 300 points or 400 points. If you don't need to access that capital, though, for many, many years, then that market volatility should not cause you nervousness or uneasiness. And so what we do for our clients, certainly as they're approaching retirement, is we will start to build up an allocation of cash and bonds. Now, there are some risks in bonds still, but typically you can buy treasury bonds or investment grade corporate bonds that typically come a little bit safer on the risk scale. And ideally, we want a minimum of 5 years worth of income distributions in these individual bonds and cash buckets. And a perfect one would be 10 years or beyond, right? But minimum 5 years, so that as you're approaching retirement, let's say you need $100,000 a year from your account or whatever it is. So you want a minimum $500,000 not in stocks, so that you know that you've got time to weather these short-term market cycles and bull and bear markets as they inevitably happen. Now, it's important to also have stocks in your portfolio, regardless of your age. And again, this isn't advice. Obviously, we know that the point of the show is not advice. And so it all comes down to the individual.
Right.
But the reason you want stocks is that it's going to help protect you against purchasing power risk. And the idea is that you want your portfolio to grow faster than inflation. But in order to get that return, you've got to have patience and discipline. And it's called a risk premium that you get rewarded for taking that risk. Historically speaking, investors that buy stocks have been rewarded by being able to stomach those bear markets as they come through. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think a couple of points at least. The take-home messages that I pick up there would be one: it depends on the individual investor, that certainly the goals in mind and what they're where they are at their I'm sure you treat someone who comes to you in their mid-20s different than someone who comes to you in their mid-50s. There's just going to be different potential strategies at that point, and diversification. So you mentioned having some money in bonds and cash versus stock market. I think it's something that I'm a real estate investor, so we talk a lot about kind of that, adding that as a diversification as well. But I think the idea when I talk to people is not that you should be only in real estate. It's like it should be a part of your portfolio. Other things should be a part. It's kind of keeping everything in a mix, because at certain times in different markets, one asset class might be up while another one's down, and vice versa. So when a client comes to you, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with, where do I start? What's going to be, and how do you approach that sort of beginning stage with people in terms of getting their money in order and really starting to think about the future?
Right. It's a big piece of financial organization is having a plan in place. And I know one of your previous guests was talking about that also, and good for them, because again, you would be surprised how many people have no idea, they have no plan. Maybe you're not, right? Because sadly, they're not teaching
anymore.
this in schools.
I used to be surprised by that. But no, I've talked to enough people that I'm like, well, you really don't have a plan. And to be fair, I was that person probably 10 years ago. I also just thought, I'm just going to keep working and that'll be fine. So, yeah.
Right.
No,
and there's no shame in
important.
that. Yeah. And there's no shame in that at all. And so again, that's where we started. You can think of it as an inventory, right? And by the way, a lot of our clients are also real estate investors as well. And I like that for the right person that has an understanding of that market as, like you said, a diversifier in their portfolio. Like, just like you said, you don't want everyone to be all in real estate. You don't necessarily need to be all in stocks and bonds either.
Right.
It can be so much smoother ride for you in retirement if you have rental income or other asset classes that aren't directly involved in the public markets. And so, but to answer your question, the starting point again, typically it's just like a doctor, an intake form, right? Let's talk about all of your assets, insurance, liabilities. Speaking of your podcast, I really like to get the why behind money with my clients. I ask questions like, why is money important to you? Do you have any money rules? What's your favorite thing to spend money on? Right. And so I want to hear that, because yes, I've had literally thousands of meetings over the years, but I'll tell you, Jason, that everybody has their own nuance and differences. And some people may want to leave a legacy to their family, and some people may want their last check to bounce. And I need to hear that so that I can help them develop a plan that is aligned with what's important to them. And that's really big at my firm, Falcon Wealth Advisors, is that we don't want to sit on our high and mighty and say that we know the answers. It's like, no, this is about you and your financial plan, and then we'll give you some advice on how that works.
Yeah. Do you find that sometimes people have trouble even answering those questions? Because again, this, like, relating to myself, there have been times where it's, people like to throw out things. I'm a big fan of mindset, and it's like, what does your perfect day look like? Or what does your perfect retirement look like? And all of these things, I actually think is a hard question to answer. And I think, sometimes some days I'm like, it means I just play with my kids all day. And sometimes it's like, no, there's more to it than that. And I just wonder if sometimes people struggle with even answering those questions for you, at least in the beginning. And I'm sure that's where your guidance comes in.
You're right. I mean, the default for everybody is travel. right?
Yeah.
They always say that, right?
Right.
Retirement. What do you want to do? Travel. So you're right. I love to just peel back those layers, and it typically will take several meetings, right? We might talk and meet, and then we meet in a quarter or 6 months, and I'll pose the same question every time. Typically, I like to start the meeting. We'll get together and catch up for a few minutes, but then I'll say, okay, last time we met, you said this is why money is important to you. Is that still the case, or what's changed? Because you're right. It's first, it's a hard question because a lot of people haven't been asked that. And second, though, it can change as your life changes. Right now might be with your kids, but when they're grown and gone, it might be completely something different, and that's okay. And again, that's why we want to check in with people. But it is hard, and I actually talk about it in my book about challenging people to say, if it's Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning and you don't have to go to work, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Right. And
Yeah.
it's scary for a lot of people. But it's good to have that conversation before they enter into retirement, not after.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a big part of why I used to think I'm just going to keep working. I'm not going to retire, because I like I like working. I like doing, I feel like that's meaningful to me. It makes me feel fulfilled. What I want, really what I want is optionality. I want to not work when I don't want to, and work when I want to. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. And so I'm sure though, thinking about things like that is difficult for people. With your book, so just so people know, that the title is Retiring Right: Smart Steps for Exiting Corporate America. So what do you, maybe give us some of the highlights from that? Certainly people can check out the book, and we'll have links in the show notes for all this, but give us some high level, what's the book about? Where at what stage should someone get in there and pick up the book and start reading?
Right. Well, thank you again. Yeah. So, and just to back up a little bit, the reason I wrote the book, Jason, is that I obviously, hopefully it's coming through, that I love what I do. I read a ton of books. I listen to podcasts. I read blogs about retirement planning and investing. And I frankly just didn't like any of the books that were out there. So I said, you know what? I'm going to write one. I'm going to write one after 18 years of experience and thousands of meetings. I want to put a high level guide together just to get people thinking about some items that maybe they haven't even ever discovered this or thought about it or checked it off their list. So it's only 150 pages. It's written in English. I know this can bore a lot of people, and I take offense to that because I love it. But I think people should start. I mean, really, anytime someone has any curiosity about one day being able to retire, I think this book is actually for them. I mean, you could be in your 20s and 30s and read it. Certainly, if in your 40s and 50s, I think it's even more relevant. But again, it's designed to be just a quick reference, a guide, so that we have a lot of things for you to consider as you're approaching that retirement. And one of my favorite definitions of retirement, which I don't know if I included in the book, but I think it's important for your audience to understand, is, to me, retirement is no longer having to trade your time doing something you don't want to do for money. And so you made me think of that just now, Jason, is like, maybe at some point you will get to be a veterinarian for 2 or 3 days a week and still get to scratch all your itches, right? And maybe, believe it or not, maybe that is retirement for you, though, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny, as I talk about retirement nearly every day, and just like you, I don't want to retire. I'm 43 years old. I think my financial plan says I'm going to work till I'm 70, and I don't even know if I'm going to want to retire then, frankly. So, because again, I'm very fortunate. I love what I do, and I don't consider this work. So to me, I'm not trading my time doing something I don't want to do. So I think if people think about it that way, maybe retirement isn't so daunting either.
Right. And I mean, and you mentioned, sort of people in their 20s and 30s versus, becoming more and more relevant for someone in their 40s and 50s. And I think absolutely, right. The farther on we get, the closer we are to, the traditional retirement definition. But I often advocate almost harder to young people, like truly, people in their 20s and stuff, in the sense that you have the most time to, if you start thinking about it early, you have the most time to have an impact. Like, the fact that I didn't really think about that I was going to retire until I mean, I'm 49. I was probably right around 40 when I started to really think, I probably do need to shift some strategy here. And it was, if I had thought about those things 10 years younger, 10 years earlier, like I would probably already be at optionality, because you have every, 5-10 years, that money, whatever vehicle you're using, that money's growing over time. And so if you start earlier, you have more time. Therefore, you don't have to work quite as hard to get money to those retirement vehicles, or you push really hard when you're young and you're able to retire earlier. And again, that definition is individual to every person. It sounds like neither of us probably have any intention of, kind of sitting around on a lawn chair, all
Right.
day. But in reality, I do want to be at the point where, like, I pick, do I want to do this case? Do I want to do this real estate deal? What's, everything is a choice. And that's, your time is completely in your control. So I do think whatever vehicle you're using as the wealth growth vehicle, the earlier you start getting into that, the easier it's going to be for people.
Yeah, and you're right. The problem with young people, and we were all probably guilty of this, is it's not sexy, it's not exciting.
No.
You're saving $100, $1,000, whatever it is, and it doesn't grow very quickly. But like you mentioned, compound interest is what you're talking about, is such a beautiful thing. And but the issue is you've got to start early and you've got to be patient. Have you heard of the rule of 72?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, you divide your rate of return by 72, and that's how many years it takes your money to double. So whether you're making, 7% or 10%, you can do the math and your money can double and double and double. And so just my clients that are in the best financially typically started early, and they just let that money compound and let it grow. Now,
it's going to feel, it's not going to feel like you're making a lot of progress in the beginning, because most 20-year-olds, they're not going to have $100,000 to invest. They're not going to have this big chunks of money, but that doubling impact is huge. I actually did like a whole thing. I did a podcast on this because I have young kids, and I was like, okay, what can I do to create a retirement scenario for them? If I'm looking at it myself, how much longer do I have doubling cycles? I mean, who knows how long I'm going to live? But like, when I look at it for my kids, my son's 5. Like, if he can double his money every 5 to 7 years, by the time he's 60, he literally doesn't need very much money to have that grow to be millions, if not tens of millions. And so it's just kind of, I've heard this a long time ago, but there's this thing about, would you rather have $10,000 or a penny that doubles every day for a month?
Right.
And it's like, by the end of the month, it's like, I think either hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars.
It's crazy. Yes.
It's amazing how that works. And there's 30 days in a month. Like, if you think about that, from an age standpoint, you can do a lot. If a penny can turn into that much money, what can you do if you're putting away $100, maybe $1,000 every month, quarter, whatever you want to call it in the beginning, and you just keep working towards that goal. The ability to have that be something substantial later in life is huge.
Right. And they talk about Warren Buffett, right? Everybody knows who Warren Buffett is, but one of the wealthiest people in the world, but the large majority of his wealth actually he's done great, but it was in his 60s and 70s when he became extremely wealthy. And just because he's been in the game a long time, right? He's been investing a long time. He's done a great job with it, but compound interest has really benefited him. And that's why he has all this money. He did good investments, and then it compounded and compounded. So you're right. It's tough though for younger people to get that, but the best thing they can do is to automate it. Really, is to automate your savings so that they don't have to think about it, and it's just happening. So if they've got a 401k or a 403b, depending on where they work, or if they're self-employed, just getting something automatically set up to get that money going in there. Is the easiest way for them to get it going. Yeah.
And I think that's why I would advocate for people to get your book early. Any books on retirement and wealth building, there's lots of them out there, but the point being, think about it a little bit, at least when you're young. It doesn't have to be all consuming. You don't necessarily have to go to college for it and make that your career, but if you start thinking about it, early on, it will change your life for sure, and without like dramatically impacting, kind of the other things you want to do in life. So with that, with your book, Jake, the idea of, kind of getting on track towards retirement, what about people that are there or close to there? I'm sure there's a bit of a shift in strategy at that point. We've talked a little bit about, sort of, oh, if you start early, it's going to be great. What about people that are, kind of a little bit behind the ball? What do you suggest as far as, I don't know if I want to call it catch up strategies, but just like ways to try and shift the way they're focused?
Yeah, the good news is if they are behind, there's some little tweaks that they can make to really improve their plan. Sometimes they're difficult conversations, but again, that's why I have a job. That's why people hire me. And so
Yeah.
that may look like extending your career 3 to 5 years and really making sure you're maximizing. Because what's interesting about retirement planning is that, if somebody makes 150,000 a year and they want to spend 150,000 a year in retirement, well, by working that extra year and not pulling that from your investments, it's basically doubling up. And so by working 3 to 5 more years, that really can improve a financial plan. And so that is very important if they're willing to extend their retirement date out a few years, making sure they're not having high interest debt and that's cleaned up so that, it's very difficult, in my opinion, for someone to go into retirement. And it's okay to have a mortgage, but if they've got credit card debts or they're still paying student loans and all these car payments, that they've got a lot of financial liabilities still out there and all they have is their retirement nest egg to pay those, it makes it a little bit more difficult, and a little bit more stress on the financial plan. So making sure your debt's in order, maybe extending out your retirement or looking for an encore career. It's crazy in this gig economy how there's Uber drivers and there's Postmates delivery people and there's bloggers and podcasters. You and I both have a podcast, and there's a lot of different ways that you can earn income now than before. And so maybe exploring some of those other avenues to help supplement your retirement and help extend your plan out a little bit further.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Uber drivers. I've been in more than one Uber with a retired person, and it often doesn't seem to be money driven. I mean, maybe they just don't tell me, but a lot of them are just like, yeah, I still want to get out of the house. I get to talk to people. I get to drive them around. Again, it just goes back to that whole, retirement doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. You may retire from X career, but move on to, a lot of people become consultants or whatever. There's a whole lifetime of knowledge and experiences that built up to that retirement, and you don't have to necessarily just lock it in a box and throw it away. I mean, there's a lot of value still to be had from those people. So I think, it's a great point that you can, if you wait 3 years to retire, you make the same amount of money. You've essentially extended it by 6 years in beyond that in terms of funds for retirement. So it's a great point.
Right, and real quick to your point on that though, because right now the baby boomers are the ones retiring, right? And their parents, though, it was a different era, right? Many of their parents worked manual labor jobs and got a pension, and they didn't want to work. They're tired, right?
Yeah.
So they would retire. But now many of these baby boomers, it's more about intellectual property and like you said, consulting and their knowledge, and they are healthy and still want to be active. And so they don't want to sit on their porch in a rocking chair. They want to go out and do things. And so it's going to be fascinating when people more in our age group start to retire, how much or if we do, right? Or what that shift looks like next, because I think the landscape is continuing to evolve and change because of the work that we all do is different. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out the next couple decades.
Yeah, it's definitely, and obviously there are still people working manual labor jobs. I think that is a factor, right? The physicality of your job, and how can you turn the knowledge of that job into something that doesn't require you to keep punishing your body, and maybe you start teaching your craft to someone else or whatever that might be. But yeah, I think it's rethinking what that traditional definition of retirement is, and coming up with one is starting that strategy, building towards it earlier on, but also just being cognizant that it's not like you have to hit this, where the clock strikes midnight and you turn into a pumpkin. You can actually still have, vitality and career aspirations after, so your retirement from your whatever your sort of job was going up to that point. Jake, I'm going to switch gears so I can get to ask you the questions that I ask every guest. The first one is related to the name of the show being Know Your Why. So I think you've touched on it a little bit, but what is your why? What's driving you? I think it's obvious you are passionate about what you do and helping people. So what's pushing you forward?
Yeah, I want to share a little story on that because I actually went through quite a bit of a change to get there. Starting out early in anyone's career, most people's career, it's about earning a living and progressing up, the corporate ladder and becoming what you would consider successful, whatever definition that is. But when that's no longer an issue or a goal, I think a lot of people get lost and they either forget their why or they don't know it. And it's difficult. And so I've actually enlisted some coaching that's helped me out tremendously. And one of the coaches I wanted to bring up is his name's John McGraw. He's a good friend of mine, and his company is called Vision Pursue. And they work with high performing either athletes or executives on figuring out what's really important to them, right? And so many people get burned out and frustrated or stressed and are unhappy. And it's really about doing that. And then I also went through a program called Stagen. It's out of Dallas, Texas. It's a leadership program that really helped me hone in on my why and my purpose. And so one of the exercises they did is they had me list out all of my core values and what's important to me specifically, and then boil that into and focus that towards my North Star or what's important. So for me personally, I've got two of them basically. So for me personally, it's to inspire others to live a happy and healthy life. I feel like if I can help people around me to choose happiness and to choose and make healthy decisions, then hopefully I'm helping my community, and that turnaround selfishly will help me too, because the others around me are uplifting and we don't have this negative vibe going along. And at Falcon Wealth Advisors, our purpose is to enhance our clients' lives. I mean, really, we're in a service industry. I'm not selling a widget. I don't even use investment products, right? We do everything in house, and so really, we feel like if our clients hire us, then it's our job and our mission to enhance their lives. And the long version of it is that clients ultimately choose to work with us to enhance their financial literacy and explain exactly what their financial plan means to them. And again, I always want to put that emphasis on the client, because I think so many advisors get on their high and mighty, and maybe sometimes there's a little bit of ego involved or arrogance, and that's not us. And we want to listen to our clients, build the financial plan according to what their rules are and what they think is important, and then help guide them along.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, I love the fact that you just do it in-house and aren't. I think a lot of people have, I have friends that have financial advisors, and or at least that's what they go by, and they're investing their money in mutual funds or something. And I'm like, you can just do that. Right, you don't have to pay someone else to do that.
Right.
Just get a Robinhood app and just put it in a mutual fund. Like that's it. That's already available to you at no fees. Like you don't have to pay someone else to do that. If you want to pay someone, like you want to pay them to be thinking about you specifically, your goals, that in building you an individual plan. So I think it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing, and I think that's kind of to me that's what I think is the ideal in a financial advisor. That's what makes the most sense.
Yes, yeah, it's a huge problem in the industry that these advisors, even passive funds like index funds or ETFs,
Yeah.
if an advisor is charging you 1% to put you in an index fund, you're going to underperform that index by 1% because of the advisor's fee. And they are taking a low cost product and making it a high cost product. And so I have a huge issue with it. So we are the asset managers, right? We pick the stocks and the bonds, and we even trade options for approved clients. And so because of that, we charge a percentage. But if I wasn't, like you said, I would charge an hourly rate or a project rate if I was going to use projects. So I don't think products in their own are bad. I think advisors that charge a percentage to manage that product is bad, because you're basically double charging to invest the money. When like you said, you can go on an app. It's so simple to do it now. And so you don't need an advisor to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not trying to disparage anyone. I just think that
Yeah, me
sometimes
neither.
I'm just like, why are you're paying a fee to do it? I mean, like this is a similar example, but I mean, we have a real estate fund, and part of our fund, we invested as fund of fund into someone else's project, right? So our investors get sort of that pass through. I don't take any fee I'm not managing that asset. I'm
Right.
literally I'm just making a way for my investors to collectively get, sort of a better return. We just pass that through. And I think that's the idea is to me is like, if you can charge percentage and fees and things, should be linked to performance in some way. So I think it's really, I like what you're doing, what the business model is. So that's great.
Thank you.
More lighthearted. Tell us something about yourself that is not common knowledge, a special skill, a hobby, just something to let people know you better. We know you love finance, but beyond that.
I have a very cool wife, and I am an avid golfer. I play all over Kansas City. I'm a member of a place in Oklahoma, and so that's kind of interesting and unique. And then I sponsor actually even a local amateur tour. So I'm really, again, we talked about I wanted to be a golf pro, but what's been neat is that golf is not my business. So golf is truly a hobby. Like, I'm not trying to directly make any money off of golf. That is pure fun and enjoyment and challenging myself. Yeah. And then a weird one, I don't know if I put this in the notes, but I think some people think it's weird. I've never been to Colorado, which I think is very weird. So have you been to Colorado?
I've been to Colorado, but I mean, there are states I'm pretty sure there are states I haven't been to.
I'm sure, yeah. But growing up in Texas and now Kansas and Missouri right here, a lot of people have been to Colorado. And I was like, I've never been there. I don't think I've ever been to Colorado. So I thought that was funny.
I mean, it's a nice, I mean, it's beautiful there. There's some beautiful areas, I think. But yeah, I guess you'll have to go to Colorado. Like, I need to come to Kansas City and try the barbecue there. So I think
that's right. I'll have to take you to lunch on that one.
Right. I haven't been to Kansas City, so there we are. We're both. That is the place I haven't been. So I guess we have that. When people hear this, Jake, and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Yeah, so I'm out there on a social media platform. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Certainly directly emailing me is appropriate as well. It's just simply jake@falconwealthadvisors.com. Hopefully it's coming through that I'm happy to address questions or even build out a financial plan for anyone that's maybe interested. I love what I do, and I've got a great team of professionals around me. So again, I'm not just a one-man show. There's 19 people in my office with my practice, Falcon Wealth Advisors, all working together for our clients.
Yeah, fantastic. And we'll put that in the show notes. And I assume somewhere in there's a link to get your book. In one of the
absolutely, yeah, it's out there on Amazon. We're very fortunate as a #1 bestseller already. Retiring Right: Smart Steps for Exiting Corporate America. Amazon's probably the easiest way. We've got a digital copy, soft paperback and hardback, and then I've got my own podcast called Upticks that's out there on YouTube, Apple iTunes, and Spotify as well, where we talk once a week. My business partner Corey and I we'll talk about latest financial news headlines and give our opinion on what's out there in the financial markets in the world.
Fantastic. I'll have to check it out. Well, Jake, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I think this is going to be really valuable to our listeners. I appreciate everything you shared. It's obvious that you care very much about what you do and the people that you work with. So I love to see that. Thank you for taking the time out to talk to us.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. And folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Connect with Jake, get his book, and please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests. And thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?